And hello and welcome back. It's time for our second part of the how to adjust with the new PokerStar change with Antes in the 9max and 6max sit and goes. I'm Aarnimetsa and I'm having Ghaleon from PokerStars with me, and we are going to look at some of the Ghaleon's hands played lately in the games that have been played differently because of the Antes.
So hi to everyone. Here are some of the hands I have been marking during this month in game, thinking that whatever it has been good play or not, or interesting situation. Like here, without Antes, I would usually fold, but have been shoving now. And if we check it with these,
I think the equivalent blind size would be 100/200, so you would have just 5 big blinds. But I'm thinking that when I'm going through more of these hands with Hold'em Resources calculator, they have actually balanced this really well.
Yeah, so I had 10-7 suited with the Antes. It's right on the border.
It's really borderline.
With these assumptions. And well, from the button, I think. Well, some people might be folding little more of the aces and king-queen suited maybe, and some of these 5s or 6s, but probably 7s plus are most people are calling at least ace-10 plus.
Yeah.
And with the 100-200, it's quite a bit more weaker if people are defending enough.
But we can also see that the defend ranges, they are considerably lower without Antes.
Yeah, that's true.
Like, that's 2 percentage points on the button. And I think, like, when I'm looking at the button range from the other side, the 9.2%, that's going to be like, I'm thinking that this is going to be more of a real life defending range.
It might be interesting if we try to copy these and see how much. So if people are calling with these old structure ranges, how much does it widen our?
I think it's going to widen it insanely.
Yeah, 60%. So if people are not adjusting at all.
This is actually a really good point on why you need to adjust. Like 10-7 suited comes up to be a plus 0.35. Yeah. Like that would be huge. But I think this shows that you really need to think these situations through. Because when I'm thinking about the turbo hands, I'm noticing that I'm thinking with the previous ranges still.
Yeah, and I have added the tournament adjusted lines also in my heart now. Should have done that for the 50-50s earlier also, but better later than never.
I think this is also going to make the 50-50s structure closer to what the 9max structure is.
Yeah, and here is Queen 10, and like without the Antes, I would never even consider shoving here from this early position.
Let's see what the real life shoving range would be there.
So the absolute break even with the Nash range is.
I would probably need to say you something about game selection. When I'm seeing that there's Darin Beachy, Air Twist, Trash, Mucket, that there are a lot of solid regs on the same table.
Well, this might have been from the $60 or $100, so it's pretty tough to not have like 4 or 5 other regs.
But in that situation, if we are looking at the range that you are given, that what would be profitable shoves, if we are thinking about what could we move here to a raise call range, or what would we like to induce here?
Well, I would raise call probably something like 8 plus.
Only pocket pairs, or?
And at least ace queen, ace. Well, ace jack would probably be better to shove. Like ace jack suited would be okay induce, I think.
Could you actually move this to be a advanced hand as well? Yeah. Were we MP1 in this hand or UTG? MP1. Because I think this is going to be a hand that it's... As you said, that with 13 big blinds, you are never thinking about shoving a queen ten off. But it's going to be a consideration after the change.
So we could be inducing even with the sixes if for example button is shoving this sort of range.
I'm thinking that's going to be pretty close to what could happen. And I think that probably players are shoving a bit tighter because you are opening so early.
Yeah, I think so, that we can maybe decrease few of these. Something like this would be probably closer.
Yeah. And what would be your shove range here? I'm actually thinking that when you are tightening up the ranges, the queen ten off could be a profitable raise call as well. It's actually going to now become really close to a profitable raise call. Or raise fold, I mean.
Yeah, it's on the break even.
Yeah. And the shove range is also a bit interesting. I must say that I don't understand this.
Yeah, I can understand the queen jack suited, queen ten suited, his pocket pairs, but is it then some sort of balancing to add the ace king off here?
Yeah, that's like ace ten suited and king queen suited, and those I understand, but the ace king off, I'm completely at a loss there. Why is it added in the shove range?
Yeah, it's way better to raise call for with these ranges, but
yeah. But if we are looking at the like shove range that we had from the first hand, like the hand from the previous tab, like I'm thinking that something like queen ten off is, when it's going to be on the edge of shoves, it's either going to be probably better played as a raise fold, or then played as a fold than to shove a completely break-even hand.
But it's also kind of a question here with the antes, that does everyone have necessarily min raise range here with 12 pp? So it's not not so easy necessarily for villains behind to say that my range is capped if I shove here.
That's also true, but I think in the early positions, the less of a min-raise range you have with these stack sizes is probably going to be something that you don't get penalized. But if this would be something like a button or cut-off hand with 12 big blinds effectively, I think that you need to have a min-raise range there.
This was actually kind of an interesting spot, because without antes and these 60 and 120 blinds, I would say this would be pretty okay for min-raise fold versus these daring and small blind, maybe even a big blind. But now with the antes in play, we would need to raise call these three smaller stacks, I would say.
Yeah, and this would probably even get to be a better shove because the average stack sizes are so low behind you. Like on average you are just having about 10 big blinds behind you. King 10 suited would be a shove even without antes, but it's going to be a better shove with the antes.
Actually check with the... Because I kind of talked about this hand in a way that if it's 120, 60 and without antes, so it would be...
Ah. So it would be close to a 10 big blind effective.
Yeah. And if we check the advanced hand side, are we min-raise calling? And I will say that without the antes, it would be in the min-raise folding range.
Even against the smallest stacks. Interesting. But I don't think it's even... If you are looking at the raise point at the MP2, it doesn't include King 10 suited. I think because it's not strong enough to raise call.
Yeah, but with the antes it should be pretty... Was it 10, I think?
15.
Yeah. 15, yeah.
The antes are really big compared to the blinds, I think.
So now with these structures, with the antes, it should be pretty clear that if we min-raise the hand in first place, we should probably be also calling it.
And even King Jack off is going to be a call there.
Well, versus the button, it would not. Yeah, it's a bigger stack.
But I think that the changes would also be... Did you open the hand as a basic hand, so what kind of your shove range would... What kind of changes to your shove range would be? So this is with antes. And in here, probably the biggest change would be at the kings we could go to King 5 suited.
Yeah, this is without, I think. Yeah.
What would you think in here? Is it better to shove or min-raise with the King 10 suited?
Yeah, it's better to shove, I would say.
Yeah, I'm thinking that it's going to be hard to...
Maybe with like if we have a read that the button is tight player, and he's kind of easy, he's just having 3% 3-bet. But ugly part is that if the daring VG, for example, shoves, are we then calling him or not? So that's kind of a reason why shoving is probably better.
But with these antes, I think that we noticed that it would probably be profitable against all the small stacks.
Yeah. The button was... did I look the cutoff? So versus cutoff, it would actually be bit minus EV.
And we can see here why it is, because even though cutoff and small blind are having the same stack size, the cutoff's range is going to be tighter, and on the cutoff's range, I think that there are hands that are playing better against the King 10 than on the button range. There's going to be like 10-9 suited, and hands that we are going to get it in good with King 10 suited.
So I just thought that this sort of situation was kind of a good example that without NTs this could be more reasonable min-raise fold hand overall.
Yeah.
But in this kind of a situation that the antis are in play, we should consider having more of those shoving hands, and if min-raising we would have to call. Just for the kind of a whole old habit has side that if you have been min-raise folding some hand as default, it might be good to reconsider now.
I think this is part of the theory lesson earlier on, when it was that the top of the min-raise fold range is going to start to play better as shoves. And I think this is a great example on that.
Here is like ace deuce off. Without NTs this should be fold, I would say. But
and
with the NTs it's pretty much better.
And I think this is going to be a hand that most players are missing when they are playing. Like ace deuce, it looks bad, and you are going to always feel bad when you are called. But I think that's going to be a really profitable hand to shove.
Here I have been shoving the ace 8 suited. I think without NTs again I would not be making this sort of play with 12 PP with more.
I actually think that this could be pretty close to a break-even shove, even with the antis, even without antis. And I think this is going to be a hand that's going to be for sure a shove with antis, but
yeah, this is pretty standard with this effective.
Yeah, and it doesn't change a point because this is already at the 150 to 300. That's the same. The ace deuce hand, I think we could look that through if it's possible, or take a quick look at it on the Hold'em Resources calculator side.
Take for comparison that if we remove the NTs, so it's actually on the borderline with these ranges.
But also, if we are looking at a mono that has 13 big blinds, I'm thinking that calling something like ace-7 off, or I think it's going to be quite on a... I think it's going to be wider than a general player would call. Yeah. And if we're looking at the hand without antes,
so quite a lot wider with these crappy offsuit hands.
I'm actually thinking that when this is at the bottom of the shove range, like, could this be a profitable min-raise fold? When this is so much at the bottom of the... This is of course a nasty hand to be min-raise folding, because if we are having opponents that are calling a lot, we are not going to hit great with ace-deuce off.
Yeah.
But I think this could be one of those spots that you can have a range that you are also min-raise folding part of the time, even though you are having just 11 big blinds.
Yeah, those crappy offsuit aces are pretty standard to have in tier also. Have the blocker value.
Especially yeah, shove is going to be good there, but an interesting spot altogether on what kind of range would there be as a good range to min-raise fold, and also as min-raise call. And that's pretty much the reason that there is a pretty sizable pot early on.
I think we can remove in real life quite a few of these hands. I think most players will be folding these lowest pocket pairs.
Yeah, most players don't want to be flipping with the ICM effects.
I think something like this would be more realistic.
And we are still having actually 7 players remaining in the game at that point.
So
wow.
doesn't have to tighten that much,
and wow.
Yeah. I mean, this sort of 0.2 is enormous in this point.
Yeah, I think that when we are thinking about these hands, I think it's also going to be a lot to think about. What hand should you call? And also, if you are like locking your range in this spot that you are opening 70%, then I think one of a good question would be, like, if you are going with 70% and you are unlocking their range for the big blind, like, what kind of range the big blind could call against an exploitative player exploiting? That I don't even have words for that.
Yeah, ICM is on use.
Yeah, but it's because your range is going to be so wide. Even a hand like 10-9 suited against a 70% range, it's going to be a... Yeah. And with the, like in this case also, you are shoving... Could we actually see the hand on the Hold'em resources or Hold'em manager, so that we can see the pot odds that our opponent is getting? Like, there's 285 chips already in the pot. So there is like as many chips in the pot as there is usually at the 100 to 200 blind level.
Yeah.
And I think this is also something that you can think about just with your your ante adjusted big blinds, because if this would be a 6 big blind spot, I think this is going to be an easy shove.
Yeah.
But let's go to the Emano's side there. And what is going to be his pot odds? 43% without ICM.
Yeah.
Like, if you are thinking about you are getting 70%, I think with ICM that pot odds required increases to somewhere around 46 to 47%. But still, if you are having an opponent that shoves 70%, there are quite a few hands that you can get 47% against that kind of a range. I think this is going to be really interesting in the way that when people are adjusting and then readjusting.
And we could see a situation where we are facing a shove ourselves. So let's say that we are on the big blind. Say just small blind shove.
That's going to be the range that's going to change most in percentage points.
Not sure what more marked hands I have, but let's see.
That's also something that I think it's going to separate the good and or okay and good players are going to be that the good players are always marking hands and they are going through the hands and not taking things for granted.
Yeah, for example here, this would be very standard call, but I have been probably folding if I had this sort of stats on the wheel line. He has been 10/5 on this sample.
This is a pot odds that we are about 45% pot odds. With ICM taken into account, it rises to something like 3 to 4% this early on. And I'm thinking that means that you are pretty much calling with every hand that's ahead of the range that your opponent has.
Oh yeah, like with these ranges that wheel line is shoving 60%, it will be very clear call. We can actually look how tight his range needs to be. So if he's shoving 40%, it's profitable.
I'm actually thinking that it's going to be pretty profitable to call with King Jack off, even against a player that
so 40% would look like this.
I'm thinking a general player would shove even, or would play a wider range than that.
Yeah, but it's kind of a tricky situation where we have very tight looking player and he does shove this deep. Does he consider the MPs?
I'm thinking that this is like, I don't think that this is a double-edged sword in a way, because if the guy is really tight and doesn't consider the antes, then I'm thinking that his range in this spot will consist of a lot of small pocket pairs and hands that he doesn't want to see a flop with. And I think against that kind of a range with King Jack off, you are getting enough when you are not requiring to be a lot ahead. But if he's considering the big blinds and antes, then his range is going to be wide enough that we are still making profit. So I'm thinking that if he's not considering, then his range is going to be capped, and if he's considering, then his range is going to be wide enough.
So versus that sort of range, it would be okay to call.
That's actually a pretty interesting range to also show that what's going to be a range that people are preferring mostly shoves with. That those are pretty much the hands that there are some hands that you wanna see a flop with. And I think that for a thinking player would probably remove some of those hands like Queen Jack suited, Queen 10 suited, because they are playing pretty well against the call. But against a player that just 3-bets or folds, that's going to be...
Yeah. It's kind of a tricky because it's also very ugly to be raise folding. Of course we can ask then, it's much better if we think that the Queen Jack suited is okay to raise call, because then we can get the benefit of the post flop and still call when the aggro player 3-bet shoves.
Yeah, that's the point, that we need to balance that. How well do we play post flop? And it depends a lot on how much the opponent is calling. Because the more opponent is calling, the more you want to weigh the post flop. And the less your opponent is calling, the more you wanna go for just the value of it. And as you said, that if your opponent is 3-betting a lot, then it feels like you have wasted the value of something like Queen Jack suited if you are raise folding it. You are editing now the 3-bet range.
Yeah, I'm just thinking that what sort of range villain might be calling. So I would assume it would consist quite a few of these Broadway cards, and maybe shoving more preferable with stuff like a low suited king and most aces, if not all.
Yeah.
Actually, there might be some of these. Maybe sometimes stuff like that.
Yeah, it's going to play well as a shove, even though they are not having blocker value.
So yeah, it would need to have much more of those. And the problem is, of course, that the portion of the AX is so strong here.
Yeah, and this is also a limitation of Holder Resources calculator, because the calling part is so badly done in a way that I know that it can't be done better, pretty much, but when it doesn't take any betting post-flop into account, the ranges are going to be so wild. And like on that spot, if you are just thinking about 3-betting and you are not thinking about calling at all, then the min-raise range becomes like almost any 2 cards, and that's not going to be.
Yeah. And here I actually posted this on my blog. As I said earlier, kind of a good situation that we are how many players there are? Still 9-handed. And like without NTs, this would be pretty crazy call, I would say. But I think with the NTs and okay will line, I would expect it to be okay to call here.
Yeah, if a villain is someone that's a thinking player, of course when I see that who the villain is, I'm thinking that the player is playing so many different structures that he probably can't adjust to everything that well.
Yeah, it might be true, but also I thought that he's playing a lot of those MTT SNG, so he should be more familiar with the NTs in general.
Yeah, in MTTs the antes are going to be more of a part of the game, because even when antes have came into the MTT sit and goes quite late, but the point is that you are almost always in an MTT sit and go, you are playing with antes when there are 9 to 8 players on a table, because even the late game is going to have a lot of players on the table.
So if we would have this situation without the NTs and 40-80 blind levels, his shoving range would be 55% and ours 30%, and king 4 off would be pretty clear fold, and so that would be close. But if we look about this situation with the NTs, all king X becomes calls. And it's a lot wider, as we can see, almost 50%. There's 15% increase.
A 15 percentage point increase, but
yeah.
that actually shows pretty well on. And that's one of the best uses of Hold'em Resources calculator, that you can see how much your opponent needs to be shoving.
So around 58.
But when I'm thinking about this situation with antes, and I'm seeing that you can shove 70.7%, I'm thinking that are players generally calling as much as they would be, because I'm thinking that the situation probably should be close to 100% situation with antes.
Yeah.
Like,
well,
I think there might be some min raises you can do, even some limping you can do, and some shoving you can do, but I'm thinking that you can play pretty close to 100% of the hands here.
Yeah.
Or should be able to play.
And I think we can decrease, well, probably all pocket pairs, all AX, most people will call. I think we can decrease somewhat of these lower card combos. Maybe something like this.
Now it's going to be that you are calling a shove.
Yeah.
And you are calling a A. Like how a general player would be calling.
Yeah, so yeah. I think would be big clear 8 now.
That's actually kind of a good point, because you don't, like, I think general player does not want to be calling with something like king 6 off. Because even when you are calling and you are going to feel disappointed so much of a time that even when it's a profitable call, I think that it's mentally a hard call to make.
Yeah. And after this result, it just looks very stupid.
And that's the point what makes it mentally so hard, even though it's like it's mathematically profitable, probably. But still you are going to be in situations that are going to be And this is exactly that. Something like ace-4 suited, it's going to be those hands that people are... Probably even if he would have 15 big blinds there, he could have shoved that hand. Like, I think those hands are the hands that are the most expected to be in a shove range. Yeah. With something like small pocket pairs.
Yeah, and I think in this spot, this villain probably doesn't have anything else than the shoving range.
But if the shoving range is 100%, then it's... I think it's still going to be... If his shoving range is 100%, what can you call then? Yeah, that's something that I'm interested in, that how could you play that as well as you could, and
10 do suited snap call. At this point it would be pretty horrible.
It would be pretty horrible against a player that plays perfectly against the 100% range. But if you are calling somewhere around... unlock the TFNC's range as well. And let's get back to the Nash ranges. And then lock your range, but then make the other opponent to shove any two here. So lock the... And... Now they're, like, even if opponent calls against the Nash range perfectly here, you are still not making a lot of mistakes here by shoving even the weakest hands.
Yeah.
And actually, could you make a new hand with the new basic hand where we are just thinking about the Nash ranges? Like, there's the blinds, have the antes there, so there's the 10 chip ante. Like, I'm just wanting to see that if you are both playing Nash ranges, will the player here in the equity difference on the big blind, are you losing more if your opponent plays 100%? It's the... I think this was without the antes. So there is the already open in the first tab, I think. Like, you are losing more. Is he gaining more? No, he's gaining less. But this is an interesting spot, that if an opponent is shoving any two and you are calling, that you are losing more than he is losing by playing more aggressively.
Yeah, if I call with the Nash ranges.
Yeah. And if you are calling perfectly, of course, then you are exploiting your opponent. But then it's like, do you really want to snap call with 10 deuce suited?
Yeah.
But that's going to be interesting to see how the ranges shape up.
I think around 80% might be something you could see from aggro regular.
Yeah, but I think the aggro regulars, if they are good aggro regulars, they should also take up min raises or limps at those situations.
Yeah.
Even though it's only 10 big blinds deep. But I'm thinking that if you are having a good polarized range consisting on the crap that you can shove profitably and consisting of consisting of some of the trappier hands, not crappier, but I think it's going to be part trappier and part crappier, but the polarized range plus a medium strength range, I think it should be quite close to 100%, and I'm thinking that's going to be the optimal way to play the small blind situation, even though the pot is going to be huge in the situation.
Yeah, I think in practice quite a few would have this sort of, it would be much more polarized in general, min raising range.
Yeah, it takes a time to analyze what kind of the min raise range there would be. Like, I'm thinking that it's going to be something like bottom 30% and top 5% or something like that. The Nash ranges are of course going to butcher that, but I think the general player is like, when you are first time seeing a reg min raise at 10 big blinds deep, do you wanna really go that widely on top of his raise?
Yeah.
In this kind of situation, the voice on the back of your head is going to say that it's a trap, it's a trap. But I think that was an interesting hand, and especially when it's against a good reg. And I think it's going to be interesting to see how these games shape up in the future. That's interesting as well to see like what's going to be in the 15 big blinds deep.
Yeah, but I think like in general, in these days, if I have someone who I know that is going to be free betting decently wide, who might be free betting, like they might be flatting with these nice playable hands, but might be value having some of
the best playable hands.
Yeah.
But it's going to be a situation that I think you are noticing in these situations with the antes, that the small blind ranges are going to be over 70% in a lot of the situations.
Yeah. But like this sort of king jack suited, king 10 suited, I'm pretty regularly min-raise calling versus aggro people. And also get the benefit that if they flat, I have a hand that pretty often dominates their range and plays really well.
Yeah.
And in this, it's because in these spots when it's early game with so many people left, so there's no ICM concerns that much.
Yeah, and this is like when there's 9 players on the table with 40/80, then there is going to be a lot of...
If we have a similar situation with 5 people, or let's say 4 people that we are in the direct bubble, I would assume that the min-raise calling range should be somewhat, or the ranges overall should be much more tighter.
But there's the question: if you are going to be in this situation, that you are going to have a good reg on small blind, a good reg on big blind, does a good reg here or what kind of a min raise range does a good reg have here? And doesn't a good reg like... I think this is pretty close that you can shove. This is pretty close that you can shove like any two cards anyway, because of the ICM pressure you can inflict on your opponent.
But just making a note that the min raise calling range tend to get a lot shallow, tighter.
Yeah.
Even
against the... I think a good point in there is that even against the range which will have the... What should I say? Even against a range that would be like 54%, still the opponent could call only 5%. And that's the power of ICM pressure. But if you are having the same situation on the bubble, and you are having it as a basic hand, so only a shove or a fold, only 78% if opponent is calling perfectly.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's 15 big blinds deep, so...
Yeah, and in practice we can remove these. If we see some reg shoving, I would pretty often consider that they don't have the top end.
Yeah, but if there is a reg that's having also the top end removed, I'm thinking that the regs are also removing the bottom end of the range as well, and then it becomes... I don't think if it's an equivalent, or... Actually, it's going to be a stronger range if the bottom is also removed. But I think in general the ranges are going to be pretty equal in strength if you are having a range that consists of or removes the top part of the range but also removes the bottom, some of the bottom parts.
Yeah, but I think that many people might be making the kind of a mistake in this sort of spot, thinking that they can't be raise calling that wide.
Yeah, for sure.
There is always the ICM, but in this sort of situation it's just a few percent extra in the chip EV equity.
Yeah, it's 2 to 3% extra, so... But I think that what we have discussed in here, I think also there will be situations where you can exploit your opponents with smaller raises as well.
Yeah.
As well on those situations. And you can go pretty low on the small blind situations.
Are there any sort of situations people might be wanting to see?
Yeah, there's a question on our chat, because I think that we have pretty much talked about the situations that we needed to discuss. And I must say thank you for the hands, because there were a lot of interesting situations that were considerably different.
Yeah, and we could also think about the defending side. That if we had the early situation on, let's say, 50-30, how much? It was 4 on the ante. So it's like 81 in the pot. And if the race, some open races from bottom like 2.5x 75, so it's going to be 156, and we have 45 to call. So if I checked it I counted it correctly.
You are going to only require about 22%.
Yeah, and if we want to check about this sort of situation with equilator. That we have a wide open raising range, so let's say that someone is opening like 60%. And we want to have let's say that we want some extra, let's say 25% equity.
Yeah, because we are not having position post-flop, so I don't think that we are realizing all the pre-flop equity that we can get. But I think that every hand is going to get 25% or more. Every suited hand, every offsuit hand.
Yeah. So equity-wise, we can pretty much defend any two, but I would not go for that wide, because we are out of position, and it's pretty tough to realize the equity, in my opinion, with, let's say, hand like Jack deuce off. But I think this is kind of maybe the hardest area, that how wide we should be defending.
I'm thinking that I like to approach the problem at a different way. That, like, what we started out with the auto profit calculations, that I'm thinking that those are going to be a good place to start. Like, we are not wanting to get our opponent the situations that they are going to get auto profit, so we are like wanting to defend enough that we are not going to get auto profited against. So we wanna make our opponents, like, in general, I think that if we are defending a bit wider than that, we are going to make our opponents indifferent between opening and folding. So, like, if we are thinking that some of the other profit calculations were, I think, if we require like 34%, then like a starting point would be, if I'm going to fold only 34% here, like, what can I defend then? To not give my opponent an auto profit. And then the ranges are going to be a bit tighter than if you are just looking at your naked equity.
Yeah.
And then you are not going to have those kind of problems that you can't realize all your equity with the weakest hands.
Just checking some free steal situations.
But if there are not any questions on the chat, these free steal situations are going to probably be the last part.
Yeah, it has been 2 hours already, so
2 full hours.
No marked hands.
But I think this has been a quite good, like, first touch on what has changed with the Antes. And there have been some real situations.
Well, here we have kind of a situation where very good regular is min raising. And I think
he knows that you two are both good regs.
Yeah, but I also think that the FNC tends to be kind of a tight.
Yeah.
Like in defending side.
I agree with you.
So here I have decided to shove. I think it's okay because the King 10 suited has a lot of equity even versus the calling ranges overall.
I'm thinking that it's not just okay, I'm thinking it's going to be really good. Like, I'm thinking that an opponent should here also have a min-raise fold range. And the min-raise fold range doesn't need to be that wide.
Yeah.
It's just, when I'm looking at these tables, that who is remaining on the tables, it seems to be insane that seems to be a bit insane. Same table again.
Yeah.
That Yu-Gi-Oh! Pro is, I think he's a good reg, and there's Mega Bobber that has played a lot of hypers, so he should be at least knowable with the antes.
Yeah, but it tends to be with these games that you have the 5 regs at least.
Yeah, and it's also, I think the late games are going to look even more insane because the weaker players are so often getting eliminated. At the early situations. But I think that we are pretty much at the end spot, and this is also a bit interesting.
Yeah.
I don't actually know that if this is a profitable race against a tight-looking random player.
It's kind of tricky because, yeah, well, the antes are so huge here.
Yeah.
So we have like 5 PP. So that's why I have probably been shoving here.
But also, like, how often a random player that's only min-raising here does have a weak hand, but an ace-8 suited is, I'm going to count as a weak hand. And even though it's not factually weak, but I think it's a weak hand from what I would be expecting from a random player.
Like, without NTs, I would definitely been folding versus this player, but might have been that.
Yeah, like you are 8, or if this would be without antes, you would be 8 big blinds deep, or actually 9 big blinds deep, and then it becomes a better fold for sure.
But yeah.
Should we try to end the stream today?
Yeah. Seems like no one has anything to ask.
Yeah, I don't know that if it's just because our explanations have been so diamond that there's like no more questions to be asked. But
or everyone has fallen asleep.
That's also a possibility. But I like to think positively that people are just in awe rather than falling asleep. But then I'd actually have a question that now that you are Supernova Elite, so as I have understood that you have been taking it slow to start this year, and you are probably starting the real grind right about now.
Yeah. Still 2 weeks.
And you did like 100,000 VPPs for the last 2 weeks of the last year.
Just 50k.
Yeah, now it's only 50k, so then it's going to be easy for if you just have a weak core. Now.
Well, it's a bit different with because I don't now play the 50-50, so that decreases the rake. rate generation side quite a bit.
And there's Marcus-wise question that isn't it a bit too positive to grow a playoff beard as a Lukko fan? This is not a playoff beard yet. I'm trying to shave it before the playoffs begin, so because it's going to grow, it will grow too long otherwise. Because Lukko is going to, this year is going to be the year that they are going to win the Canada Cup. And Ghaleon from Oulu is probably going to disagree with me.
Yeah.
But
well, I think I haven't followed those games, but I think the Kärppäs have been winning the.
Yeah, that's actually something that it's really hard when your mind is in the English mode. Like Kärpät is going to be the hardest word to pronounce. It's just like you are showing the word to someone from Britain and they are like, you can't pronounce anything like that. But I think I'm going to wish you good luck for your grind, because I'm thinking that it's going to be a sizable grind to go, and I'm thinking that you are going to have a lot more of a feeling for these 9max games and how the Antes have changed the games in 2 weeks, because I think most of your volume is going to come from 9max and 6max games.
Mostly, yes.
Without the 50-50s. And thanks everyone for following our stream today. If there is something that you like to see, please write to our feedback threads. And if you like this video and you are watching on YouTube, please press the like button there, because it really helps us. And I'm thinking that right now, if you are going to sleep, have a good night. If you are still playing poker, may this be a winning night for you. And now it's your point to say your goodbyes.
Yeah, goodbye.
And thank you, Ghaleon, for being here with me, and thanks for bringing some interesting hands for today's session. So, and the next Sit and Go session will be on next Saturday, next Sunday, so see you then. I'm probably going to do a next session on the 9maxes with Antes, and trying to keep everything in mind that we have discussed about today. So, goodbye.
Bye.